You are tuned in to WCHB AM 1340, a Radio 1 production, and welcome to another segment of Kingdom Connections. Hey, I'm your host, Reverend Erica, and I bring you greetings from the Mount Pleasant Missionary Baptist Church, where I serve with my dynamic pastor, the Reverend Dr. James Minnick. The Mount Pleasant family, we're just so excited to join you today because we're always about bringing you information and inspiration so that you can be about your Father's business, and that is spreading, extending the kingdom of God to all the corners of the earth. Listen, God has given us some instructions. So this Kingdom Connection show is about financial revelations, because God has a plan. He has a financial plan, and in his financial plan, he owns everything. He owns everything, and we are stewards, and as stewards, we need to know what his word says so that we can be good stewards. So with that in mind, I'm so excited for this show today because I have a special guest in the house, virtually that is. Today, I have a special guest with me, and her name is Jehan Crump-Gibson, the attorney with the most. She has some great information she's going to build us up. She's going to inform us and help us to be some good stewards when it comes to wealth transfer. Today, we're going to talk about estate planning, and just stick around because we're going to answer your questions, anything you want to know. Welcome to the show, Jehan. How are you today, my dear?
I am wonderful. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show because you have a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of information all up here that needs to get out. We need to know what to do in times like these. I mean, this is some crazy stuff that we're experiencing. And so I wanted to make sure that I try to share as much information as I can with folks, but they've been asking me some questions. I'm like, I don't know. to the estate planning, but I know someone who does. My friend Jehan, welcome, girl. So tell us all about what you do.
Thank you so much. So again, as our illustrious host said, my name is Jehan Crump-Gibson. I'm with Great Lakes Legal Group. We are a boutique legal and consulting firm with offices in Detroit and Southfield. My primary practice areas are probate and estate planning, and business, commercial, and real estate. So I spend a lot of time working with families, advising them to get their affairs in order on the front end so that you don't have to worry about the extra added expense and the stress on the back end.
Yeah.
And that's critically important. A lot of us just assume that, okay, well, estate planning isn't for me. I ain't got no money. It's not true at all. So our theme, our mantra at Great Lakes Legal Group is if you have a penny, you got to decide what's going to happen with that penny. So that's a little bit about me and about the firm and my practice areas. I've been practicing for 11 years. I love what I do. I love working with families. I love doing things like this because we have to make sure that we have the knowledge and the resources. The reason why we suffer and there's such a gap that needs to be bridged is because we don't. So any opportunity that I get to be able to spread the message and the word and provide folks with what they need to get their affairs in order, I jump at the opportunity. So thank you for this amazing show, and I'm glad to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for giving us that background and understanding of how you have this specialized focus on probate and estate planning. I'm so glad that you said that if you have a penny, because that includes everybody.
Exactly.
You know that if you're alive, you have an estate. You said if you're a human being, I think that's what I heard.
Yes, if you're human, you got an estate. Now, it may look different than Bill Gates, but you got one.
You got an estate. So there's some things that we can do to prepare so that we don't have all that heartache and headache on the back end, and we're not just using that street knowledge, passing that information along of what you can do so that you can figure out that who gets mama's house, or who's going to get dad's motorcycle, or his golf clubs or whatever, or if they had some money that we didn't even know about, how do we find it? You know,
Mm-hmm.
so we get all those questions, and I just wanted to bring some of that to you today, because all of that has already been in existence, right? Those questions, but now against the backdrop of the pandemic and COVID-19, we're seeing it exacerbated because it's just coming at us like a flood. And I, you know, personally, I've been sharing that, you know, I have not come out of this, or will not come out of this unscathed. I lost
Mm-hmm.
my husband.
Mm-hmm.
It was totally unexpected, because we've been in the financial planning arena. There are some things that we did put in place, you know, to prepare for the unexpected, but that didn't make it any easier.
Mm-hmm.
So emotionally, it didn't make it easier. It did make it a little easier when it came to just things just falling into place.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine if we hadn't done those things. And I know so many of us who don't. So I have a bunch of questions that folks have been posing to me. Like yesterday, I got questions from clients, and I said, you know what? I don't have the answer for you today, but I have a friend. I
Mm-hmm.
know someone who this is what she does for a living. And so I just wanted to bring those questions to you today, and anything that you think that we should know when it comes to estate planning. So why don't you talk a little bit about some of the things that you've been experiencing here lately?
I'm glad you asked me that. I say now, you know, before, you know, there's some folks that understand the importance of estate planning, even if they don't understand what all entails, and there are others that just think that it doesn't apply to them. But I say the best commercial we can have, so to speak, now is the tragedy of this pandemic. You know, folks were hit out of nowhere. Estate planning is about planning for the unexpected. Who would have thought coming into 2020 and everybody had their vision boards and everybody was coming in all excited for what 2020 would bring, that this was waiting for us. Big plans, huge plans. So
Yeah.
no one would have anticipated that this was waiting for us. And unfortunately, we had a bird's eye view of how failing to plan can have a direct impact, because unfortunately for the families, we got a lot of business because folks didn't have estate plans in order. So there were folks that were on ventilators trying to figure out how I can handle mom's financial affairs right now. What can I do? Unfortunately, mama didn't have any powers of attorney. So we got to run off to probate court to get conservatorship. It was a mess because things had to be, you know, put virtually. Couldn't go in the courthouse anymore.
That's right.
Yeah, so the court was trying to figure that out. So, you know, it was a lot of drama with that. People that were, you know, that made it out of the hospital into rehab, that became an issue in terms of being able to make placement and care decisions, in terms of guardianship. So we had that come up. And then unfortunately, to those that lost their lives, that left others scrambling, you know. So we had a few clients, new cases that I would say had plans in place, which helped. And then, you know, there's some just kind of sort of, you know, out of court administrative things that need to be handled, but it's not as bad as if, you know, they didn't have a plan. But the majority of our new business that came out of this COVID-19 pandemic were folks without a plan. And
Wow.
so, yeah, and it was, and you know, again, it was one of those things that people, if they were thinking about it, they thought, oh, I got time. But, you know, I'll tell you, the estate that I opened up, the youngest client that I have, the spouse that passed away, he didn't even make it to his 36th birthday.
Oh. Oh.
Left behind two young kids. So at the end of the day, again, this is one of those things where I'm sure that couple, like a lot of others, whether you are married or single or have children or don't, you're thinking, oh, well, I'm healthy, I'm young, you know, I got time, I'll figure that out. And you don't know that.
Right.
We don't know what his plan is for us. And so because we don't know that, we don't have that direct insight, you got to be ready. And
Yeah.
so it's important, it's critical that you get a basic estate plan done. Most of, you know, what we tell folks, everyone's is going to look different. You know, it's like your fingerprint. Everybody has a distinct fingerprint. So everybody has something going on differently in terms of what they have and what they want to do and their wishes. So everybody's plan is going to look different. Yours may be very simple, and then it's going to change over the years, because you're going to get with my good friend, Reverend Erica Hall. and you're gonna get some money. And so then your plan changes at that point. It's an ever evolving document. So we just encourage folks, get in and get it done. It's not as bad as you think, and it will give you the peace of mind that you will need to know that if something goes wrong, that it won't go to probate court. Your business won't be out there. Probate court proceedings are public. I will repeat that, public. And we're private. You know how we are. We don't like our business out there.
Look, now you just said the key word, because that's the whole reason I think that's the crux of why we end up in this situation, because one, we don't like to talk about it. That's my business.
Mm-hmm.
And then we think when we hear estate planning, we think Wall Street, Main Street, and then we got, we out here in these streets. So now that doesn't apply to me, but it not only does it apply to us, but it's so crucial. It's so crucial that we understand how we can make such an impact if we get ourselves involved in taking care of that business and wealth transfer. So you talked about estate planning, why it's important, that it applies to you, and what it takes. So what is an estate plan? What is
Great question. Great question. So an estate plan includes documents that direct who will handle certain affairs for you if you become unable to, or if you pass away. I think the first myth that people start to think about is, okay, so estate planning has to do with what happens when I die. Well, no, a lot of people are living much longer, but that doesn't mean that you're in your right mind or you're going to be in a position where you're able to handle your affairs. So it's a guide that says, here's who I want to be the point person to handle my stuff. And then if I pass away, here's who handles my stuff. Here's who takes, custody of my kids or guardianship of my kids. And then here's how I want it to be distributed. You may want to leave things specific outside of what the state law says. So, we all know that at 18, you're the age of majority, but you're still foolish. And you know that you'll spend any money that you get. I know what I would have blown if I got money at 18. I can tell you that right now. And so a lot of times parents, want to make sure that they have procedures that are in place that say how my kid is supposed to get this money, because I don't want them foolish going out and buying a new car and then not taking care of their education or things of that sort. So that's your plan. And the process actually includes much more than me. Mm-hmm. I'm the attorney, I'm the drafting attorney, but I work regularly with wealth advisors or financial advisors or CPAs or insurance agents, because collectively those are people that are dealing with your assets. And this is what we're directing in the plan. So the plan is the playbook for what happens if something goes wrong. And then what we put in the playbook depends on what assets you have.
Exactly. And I recently had surgery a few months ago, and I remember being in the hospital just before they were getting ready to wheel me into the operating room, and they gave me all this paperwork where we're talking about medical power of attorney, medical directives, all this stuff. Your mind is somewhere else in that moment. That's just so important to have those documents in place before you need them, right?
Exactly. You when you get to the moment where you need these documents, it's a highly stressful time, so whether it's like you explained, if it's about you getting ready to go for a surgery, you're in a completely different headspace. So you try to make decisions and sign forms and think about who handles what, because it is a big deal. You have to pick people that you trust and can do the job. So you don't want to get to that moment to do it. And then again, if you get to a point where you're unable to make those decisions, it's too late. And then your loved ones are left having to go to probate court to handle your affairs, even if you're still here. And that's something that you just don't want.
That's a critical period. That's a critical moment that we definitely don't think about. We think about life and death.
Mm-hmm.
Think about, as you mentioned, and so prevalent right now, being during this pandemic, where you have someone who's incapacitated. So incapacitation causes you to not be able to make financial decisions, not be able to share your wishes. People can't visit you, can't communicate with you. You can't do your banking, you can't pay your bills.
Nothing. But
everything is still due.
And I will tell you this, in terms of trends with courts, a lot of people, because I've had folks come up And I said, okay, well, what can we do right now? Can I get power of attorney over mama because she's in here and this has happened? And the thing is, the principle, you cannot get power of attorney. It has to be given to you by someone. So, and that person has to have sound mind to give it.
And
so that's the first thing that I tell people all the time. I want to get power of attorney. You can't get something. It has to be given to you.
Wow. Now you saying something right there.
It's important.
That
it's
the
important.
power has to be given to you. I'm not going to go to the word right now, but I'm just going
I know we getting there.
I'm just going to take that and stand on that, because while you have the power, you can make such an impact in how we transfer wealth. So today we're going to be talking about your estate, the proper transfer of wealth, debunking some of these myths of, just because you're on your mom's account, or you have your child on your account, or you put some, or we do quick claim deeds. We're going to talk about that.
We're going to talk about that.
How are we transferring wealth? We want to make sure that we're in position to transfer wealth properly, or not just transfer, but preserve wealth. And we're going to talk about this person. I don't know who this person is. It may be a mythical person, but there's this person downtown who, when folks come down with the title and they want to transfer the new house, they want to transfer the family home into a new owner's name, somebody down there is telling them, don't you do that. Gonna go up, gonna go way up. And so let's talk about some of those things when it comes to wealth transfer and our family.
Perfect. Let's do it. So if we want to, I want to jump right into the house situation, because that's a common. I need to get there first.
I know who that is down there, but somebody, and
they're not mythical. They exist. They exist, and it happens. But commonly, with individuals where the house ends up being the largest asset, or the largest one next to like an insurance policy or 401k or something like that, the house ends up being one of the more sizable assets and important assets. And people do have it in their minds that they need to do something with that house. I will say that. And so that's where the quit claim deed comes in. Well, let me just go ahead and add boo-boo to the deed right now so that something happens to me. Okay, and so here comes the problem with that. If you add boo-boo to the deed right now, if boo-boo gets sued, if boo-boo files for bankruptcy, if boo-boo gets divorced, there are a number of things where that house becomes, his interest in the house becomes a countable asset. And you don't want the place where you lay your head while you're still here to be up on the chopping block and subject to a lien because boo-boo has messed up and done something wrong. So that traditional adding something to the deed, while it can work, if boo-boo keeps everything straight and doesn't get sued and file for bankruptcy and all these things, then it could work. But what happens when something goes wrong? So we actually have a tool here in Michigan that is not in all states. So you may talk to somebody that's in Alabama and mention it, and they go, I have no idea what you're talking about. And that's because it's not everywhere. But we have what we call a ladybird deed.
Ladybird deed.
Lady Bird is named after Lady Bird Johnson, First Lady, Lyndon B. Johnson's wife. So that's where it gets its name. And it allows you to be able to retain the right to do what you want with your house while you're still here. So you can lease it out, you can sell it, you can mortgage it, you can do whatever you want to it while you're still here. But once you sign this deed, it will pass to whoever your beneficiaries are. The legal term is your remainder men, but it's your beneficiaries upon your passing without going to probate court. You get to skip the probate court process. Okay. And oftentimes we suggest this. The average client that comes in, let's say it's mama, she's widowed, she has a checking account, savings account, and a life insurance policy, and then the house. Well, if she has that, we're not going to do some complicated trust for mama. It doesn't make sense. Her assets don't justify it. So what do? We make sure that she has her powers of attorney and her will in place and certain other directives, but to cover that real estate, we'll do a ladybird deed. So that she doesn't have to jeopardize the property while she's still in there. She still owns it, so she's not dealing with the mythical person down at the tax office saying, don't do this, don't do that, and it ends up accomplishing the goal. So we have various tools out there. That's why I said the fingerprint. Everybody's estate is different, where we can preserve and protect without having to go to probate court and cost more stress, more money, because that costs money. I got to get paid. The court got to get paid. People got to get paid. And so you don't want that to happen. So that's a tool that's available. And we have all sorts of crafty things that we can do.
Right.
That relates to the house.
That's what you spend your time doing, learning and figuring out how to create strategies and use these tools. And I think it's really good. Thank you so much for bringing up the money, because that's number one. How much does it cost? How much is it? The reason I don't think I need a trust is because I don't have a whole lot of assets, or I don't have a whole lot of money in my bank account. And you know, probate, I'm not quite sure what that process is. And if I may not want to put up all that money on the front end, because I don't know the pain that comes on the back end. And so it really helps out the beneficiaries or the family that's left, that has to settle your estate, because that's actually one of the I got a lot of questions regarding having to do that, where the person had a trust or didn't have a trust, or had a will. How much am I liable for? If I call the credit card company and let them know that my loved one passed away and they trying to get me to pay, am I liable for my spouse's credit cards or their medical bills, any bills that they have, spousal or just a family member? So I'm getting a lot of those questions. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Great question. So you are only personally liable for what you sign on for. So what does that mean? We're talking about the credit card. So if your husband or whoever had, or mom or, you know, relative had a credit card with Capital One, and you were a joint card holder on that account, then yes, you are personally liable because you signed on to the debt.
Right.
But if you did not, you're not personally liable for those bills. So you're not personally liable for the credit card, the Home Depot card. That one always comes up in the States. I got to tell you, everybody got a Home Depot card. I'm not even joking. And so the Home Depot card, medical bills and expenses, you are not personally liable. However, if an estate is open, the estate would be liable. So before you can walk away with any distributions or any money or anything that's left over, those debts would have to be settled. Now, if a probate estate is not open, in a lot of cases, you know, folks, you tell them to take the hike, because these people are relentless. When they get word that someone has passed away, the credit card company is calling. But, you know, there are different options. I see a lot of times, some credit card companies, they'll hire third-party debt collectors. We all know that. Yeah. And so there are certain ones that literally comb the death notices or wait until there's a notice to creditors issued to see who owes who money. Some of them are authorized by their client to file a claim in probate court, meaning they can officially file something with the court that says this person owes me money and they got to pay, or they can't close this estate, or they can't finish out anything. Well, that's different than other creditors who are not authorized to file the same claim. So they can call and bully you, but the client doesn't authorize them to actually file something in court. And you deal with them a little bit differently than you deal with the next person. So it's a lot that goes into the creditor's claims process, but just across the board, personally, you are not liable for any debt that you did not sign on to, co-sign, or things of that sort.
Okay, that's some good information, because I you know, I've seen them both recently, and where it was either spousal or an extended family member who took on or was named executor in the trust, and was given the responsibility of settling the estate, and just had so many questions about what am I responsible for? Do I have to pay all of her medical bills or his medical bills? Do I have to sell the home in order to pay the bills, or can I maintain the home? Just things like that. You know, it's so it's uncharted territory, and I think that if it's your first time having to take on that responsibility, you just have so many questions.
And they're going to be a lot. I mean, the first thing that you do, first of all, a plan helps address a lot of these issues. But then again, even if you do have a plan, you know, settling debts is something that you're going to have to deal with. So it just helps to have that knowledge in advance, and everything is treated differently. Mortgages are treated differently than credit card payments, especially depending on what you want to do with a house that's left behind. So a lot of interest.
What about the mortgage? If the mortgage is in the decedent's name, and you do plan to keep the house, what happens with the mortgage?
Great question. So a few things can happen with the mortgage. First of all, it has to be satisfied or assumed one way or another. You can't take mama's house or continue to live in the house and then act like the mortgage doesn't exist. If it is a lien or encumbrance on that house, whether it's a home equity loan that you took out, or is this the original mortgage or refi, whatever it is, that debt has to be satisfied. So some heirs are able to obtain their own, they may assume that mortgage, and it honestly depends on the lender, obviously, what the options are, or they're able to obtain their own financing, or they end up selling the house and then satisfying the lien. But if you want to stay in that house, the mortgage has to be dealt with. And again, common options are either assuming the mortgage or going ahead and getting your own financing. What I will say though is oftentimes, because as long, for the most part, a lot of people will fly under the radar. As long as the mortgage company is getting that payment, and no one's checking for you. No one's coming and saying, okay, well, what happened with Bob? Because they're still getting that check every month.
Right.
But it becomes an issue eventually. There's certain things, certain flags that may come up, and then eventually, if you do want to sell the property, or you do want to refi, or you want to do something, take out a home equity loan, then at that point, the jig ends up being up. So you try to fly under the radar and make those mortgage payments, and you didn't think it was that big of a deal, but eventually it ends up becoming an issue.
All right. So, we run out of time so quickly because this
information is
so good. It's so good. So I want to make sure that I give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about how to work with you and your firm, things like that. But I must take this moment just to let the believers and the folks out there that God has not left us ill-equipped or unequipped. I mean, he says in his word that it's our responsibility as parents. I believe it's 2 Corinthians 12:14, and he reminds us that it's our responsibility to make provisions for our children. It's not our children's responsibility to take care of us. It's our responsibility to make provisions for our children. I know the commandment says that we are to honor our parents, but parents are supposed to leave an inheritance for their children's children. And that means that we have to do an estate plan. We have to properly prepare for the wealth transfer. And that's why you and I work so good together, because my job, I'm always about gathering the assets, knowing where everything is, all the policies, all of the titles, all of the stock options and certificates and all those, make sure they're properly titled and all of that stuff, so that when we send that net worth statement, that financial statement over to you, all you have to do is make sure that based on the wishes of that client, that everything is titled properly, that you have all the proper documentation based on what you want to happen during your lifetime and after.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So wonderful. Okay. Now I know that that you're gonna stick around just for a moment after we sign off on the radio. So before we go, we got just about a minute and a half left for you to talk about what's a good relationship with you, an ideal client, and how can someone get with your firm to work with you all?
Wonderful. So I will give our website. I'll start off with the second question first. So I will give our website, which is www.gllegalgroup.com. Again, that's www.gllegalgroup.com. Our office number, our main central number is 248-395-3699. For you social media buffs, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and YouTube and all that on the handle gllegalgroup.com. If you go to our social media page, you can actually click and pull down estate plan questionnaires to start filling out, to kind of figure out what you would need to get the process started. My ideal client, I can't say that it's a sweet spot. You have some people that like to say, oh, I love to work with couples. I love to work with, single professionals or young. We will work with anyone across the gamut that is serious about getting their plan done and willing to be educated and listen. That's my ideal client. So you're willing to come and learn and then get your plan done, we will take you.
Right. That sounds like a good ideal, the ideal client, someone who's willing to, they want to grow And
Yeah.
they want to make a difference in where they are now to where they want to be. Well, that was my ringtone to let us know that it's time for us. Right, that was time for us to sign off. We just want to thank you so much for tuning in to Kingdom Connections on WCHB AM 1340, a Radio 1 production. Kingdom Connections is all about bringing you inspiration and information. And listen, if you don't know the Lord for yourself, we invite you to join us at the Mount Pleasant Missionary Baptist Church each and every Sunday. We know that we aren't worshiping in person, but you can join us every Sunday on our virtual platforms, on our Facebook page. You can check out our YouTube channel. That's the Mount Pleasant Media Channel. And you can also give us a call at the church at 313-884-6648. Call us. Subscribe to our channel, ding the bell so you get a notification every time we go live. And especially right now, we have this outdoor worship experience right now, Jehan. It's called Simply Worship, right? We're just coming out and having a short time. We're not there too long, but we just come and we're just looking for some real worshipers, those who just throw up their hands, and just, let your cares go and lay it all on the altar. And we're outside, we're wearing our mask and we're physically distancing, but we got our focus on God. So we invite you to join us each and every Sunday. We're signing off today, and I thank you so much for tuning in, because Financial Revelations is understanding what God says to us about managing our wealth and resources. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Reverend Erica. Blessings. All right, so now we're going to get to something that you want to share, share with us. Before we go, something that you just need people to know, that debunk some myths or something you just been in your spirit or on your heart.
Yes, I think the first thing that I want to discuss is an issue that constantly comes up with individuals that leave their property expecting someone to do the right thing. So what do I mean by that? Let's talk about an insurance policy. So I have had clients come in and say, oh, well, I have my son, they have 3 kids. I have my son so-and-so on insurance, and he knows what to do. No, mama, we're not going to do that, because Bo may change his mind and be of a different mindset after you get to the other side and decide that he doesn't want to give his siblings any money. So if you're leaving Bo on the insurance policy is getting everything, because that's your oldest or that's your responsible child, then you run the risk of him not giving the money like he was told to his other siblings. And that's the case of insurance policies, bank accounts, or other things that you can leave beneficiaries on. That's a common mistake I see made, or a misconception that, I can leave it and then it will definitely pass to all my heirs. And that's not the case. So again, there are ways that we can get around that. If you don't have the assets to justify a trust where you have some flexibility, again, I may tell you, okay, we'll just leave everybody equally on the insurance policy and then go from there. So that's one of I'll call it a myth, but one of those things that I see parents coming in with that mindset of having that point person, that child that will do the right thing. And my office has been called on more than one occasion where that child didn't do the right thing. In one case, one child didn't even pay for her father's burial, and she was on the policy.
I've been seeing too much of that where we already see that, money can bring out some monstrous attitudes and behavior and stuff that you just never thought you'd see your family do. And even it doesn't even have to be a lot of money. It can just be a house.
It's the smaller amounts that cause the bigger issues that tie me up in court. I'm telling you.
And so you may not be able to stave off the attitudes and the behavior, but you can definitely stave off what happens by specifically having your wishes spelled out, because people can be upset about it, but it is what it is, right? Once it's written,
it is
paper, that's what it's going to be. And you mentioned earlier something about probate. I want to talk a little bit about that real quick, because You were talking about it being public. And then I don't think we have an appreciation for how creditors, how this is their job to live in probate, you know, and how it can be, things can be held up. You're talking about costs and things like that, and how we want to be private. We want to be as private as possible, and have everything managed outside of having to go to court. And why is it that we want to stay away from probate, or is probate okay in some instances?
Never. And so,
Never.
so I never,
Never.
never. It's never okay. I mean, obviously when needed, but here's why you don't want to go through probate court. And this is the same across, you know, conservatorship, guardianship. When you hear me say conservatorship, that means the person that steps in and handles your money while you're here and unable to. And your guardian is who handles care, placement decisions, treatments, procedures when you're unable to. So whether it's the conservatorship, the guardianship process, or estate administration after you pass away, the public process is the public process. The filings that are going on down at the court are public. So accounts have to be filed when you're dealing with your finances, whether this is under conservatorship or whether it's under the probate estate if you pass away. All of that is public information. So what went into your estate and what it was spent on, and then what came out, it's all public. And then God forbid somebody have an argument and you got to have a hearing on it, because then you're down at the courts showing everybody, airing all the dirty laundry, and that's when it really comes out. And so in terms of that's what I mean when it's public proceedings. People, anybody can go and get access to the document. Wayne County actually just made its records, you know, before COVID, you could go down in the building and search records at the computer on the 13th floor. Well, obviously, since the building is closed to the public, we aren't able to get this files in the same way, but they've made online access available. So at the end of the day, if I want to just go look up Bob Smith's will and estate and all that other stuff, you can look them up. And so if you want to maintain privacy and integrity, you know, that's one of the reasons that we do the planning. And then the stress that's associated with it. You have a lot, if you have to go to probate court because a loved one is either incapacitated or they've passed away, there's a lot of responsibility on you. So these titles that I've used, the guardian or the conservator, in the case if someone passes away, it's called a personal representative, or it used to be executor, but it's personal representative.
Yeah.
And that person has what we call a fiduciary duty, which is very serious. If you mess up, you can end up getting a judgment against you. I had someone that came to me, I was probably the third lawyer he came to see. Unfortunately, he was trying to handle his conservatorship stuff himself, and I believe he got slapped with a $237,000 judgment because he wasn't, and it wasn't that he was stealing money from his mother. He wasn't. He was doing what we would normally do, move mom into the house. You know, you're getting some work done on the house, you're trying to improve it for mom, you're handling other things, but he wasn't keeping receipts properly. He got stressed out, so he wasn't really responding to court notices because it was a lot on him. And, you know, unfortunately, there were some hearings after, and $237,000 judgment. I may have the number off, but it was a lot of money against this man.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate. That's very unfortunate. And that's just you know, another reason why, and that's why we run our practice, we run our office as a family office, because it is so important to have your financial team covering areas of your life that you're not either well versed on, you don't know about, or you have to have you know, training and all, and years of working in that area to keep up with the changing laws and policies and how everything changes according to like the pandemic and all those things. So we definitely make sure that our clients have access to not only their financial statement, but their accounting team, their legal team. And it's just so important to have access to that, because we perish for lack of knowledge. That's one of the reasons we're unable to transfer the wealth. I just came off a couple of months of talking about the importance of life insurance. And, I'm still pressing the case for having at least a couple hundred, 250, 300, $500,000 of life insurance is not absurd. In fact, it's so necessary. We got to think bigger. We got to think bigger. We got to think, longer and far stretching beyond ourselves, and not just thinking about just that burial and stuff like that. So, whoo.
I love that you say that, because how many times have we seen the GoFundMe pages pop up for people, and I'm tired of it. I am tired of it, because for what you spend and getting your nails done, or getting, whatever the case is, it's not as crazy and as expensive as you think it is for something that's necessary. Because your little burial policy, honestly, what you want, funerals are expensive. They are very expensive. And so for what you want, it may not cover it. And beyond that, there may be final expenses and other things that need to be taken care of. And you don't want your relatives to have to rush to put the GoFundMe up and, go in a campaign to try to raise this money. It doesn't make sense when it's something that's affordable. So keep pushing that message. I will push it with you, because it's so important. It's so important.
We got to change the mindset. We got to change the mindset that life insurance is one of the greatest tools to create generational wealth.
Absolutely.
One of the greatest tools. But what I have to do is I have to make sure that I also push the notion and the knowledge of that it can be a living benefit as well. So maybe if we stress how it can be such a living benefit to the person who is alive, maybe they'll think about the double duty that this tool can do in protecting your wealth, giving you can even do some personal private banking with these types of tools, right? And so, but I think that that's going to take another show.
That will take another show. But I think it's a great idea, because like you said, that extra added measure, what this policy can do for you while you're still here. I know folks that have used whole life policies as collateral to buy buildings for their business. I mean, so they're okay. We gonna get into that later. That's a whole nother thing.
They use it for key man policies, for buyouts, leverage. So you definitely want to make your portfolio more sophisticated. Well, I wanted to make sure we kept it really basic today, so that we can bring everyone in to the conversation. Especially now that this means you. She said, if you have a penny, if you're a human being, you need to have an estate plan, because guess what? If you don't have an estate plan, there will be one created for you, and it may not be the wishes that you have. Michigan, we live in a state. What is the intestacy laws for the state of Michigan?
Great question. So intestacy, which means you pass away without a will, essentially the law is very clear on who gets your assets, and it runs down your bloodline. So let's say that you've passed away, and I've had this happen, where someone passed away, he wasn't married, he didn't have kids, and his parents were gone because he was probably in his 70s or 80s. Well, at this point, if that happens, if you don't have any kids or a spouse, or your parents are gone, your siblings will take your share. And then if that sibling has predeceased you, then their kids step in. So I had an estate once where there were essentially ended up being 22 heirs, because this man had maybe 6 or 7 different siblings, and some of them had passed away, and they have 4 or 5 kids. And what was unfortunate, my client who took care of her uncle when he passed, she was there for him. Out of that 22, only her and her sister were the ones that saw her uncle. There were people getting this man's money that had not talked to him in decades. And when I say decades, I mean decades. And they were calling my office talking about, oh, well, when am I going to get my check? Because I need to get my teeth done. That was a real story that actually happened. I'm not making that up. And so you don't, and would those have been his wishes? Probably not. You don't want to leave your money to the individuals that you haven't talked to in 30, 40 years, haven't even checked on you, heard you weren't doing well. Maybe you want to leave it to this specific niece, or you have a close friend that you want to leave some money to, your church, or wherever else. So if you don't decide, as you said, the state will decide, and it's going to run down your bloodline, and you may have a cousin or a niece or a brother or a sister, Pookie, that you don't want to get your stuff. And if you don't want that to happen, that's why you need a plan. One other thing that I will say that I think is important, and it goes in line with that penny, and if you're a breathing human, you may not have Aretha's estate. I think we've all seen in the news what's going on, how that's caught up in probate court. But honestly, if you don't have that type of money, that's all the more reason why you can't afford to have your loved ones go through the process. Your estate will go through the same process that Aretha's does, even though you don't have anywhere remotely close to the same amount of assets. The probate process is the probate process. So obviously, maybe things aren't going to be tied up as long, but if people are arguing, they can be, and it's the same type of things that go on. The attorneys that have to be hired, they make the same arguments, they bill the same. So if you have less than Aretha, you can't afford to have that drain on your estate, because there'll be nothing left to leave to your loved ones. And who wants that to happen?
We don't, and we don't want to have it tied up. We know we can, people can hold a grudge. And so we've talked about all the things that you want to make sure you don't do. Will you come back, please? Will you please come back?
I'll be back whenever you want me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, because there's so much that we want to show. How about we show what it looks like when it's done right?
When it's done right. And it can be such a beautiful thing. I've sat through both. I've sat through the folks that didn't have the plan, and I see how taxing it is. I'm on the phone, or pre-COVID, we're in the office, and these folks are in my office crying, stressed out. They, going through, so I can't even really put it into words, having to be there, and you're sort of, kind of trying to shepherd them through that process. Whereas you have someone that had a plan and had it together. And I mean, of course, they're heartbroken too. They're going through the grieving process, but it's not as much stress in terms of dealing with the business. So it makes it easier to go through that grieving process and get to a better place. So we absolutely need to show how it is when it's done right.
Yeah, I've experienced that. And I'm not going to keep you all day. I know you probably got to get to court, or you got something very important to do. We thank you so much for the work that you're doing in our lives here in the city, here in Metro Detroit. You have offices all over Metro. Bless the Lord for your team. And I just thank God that I found you.
Thank God I found you. We talk about that all the time. So.
Yeah. So wonderful. Yeah, this is a long-term relationship, because we got to help. We got a lot of people to help. All right. So thank you again for coming on to the show. Financial Revelations is a part of the Kingdom Connection, where we're all about giving you inspiration, information for your life. The Word of God is, it can be a lamp to your path, a light to your path, a lamp unto your feet. So we want to make sure that we help you walk that path out. Listen, we hope that something's been said that will bless your life. We thank Attorney Jehan for coming on to the show today. Be sure to check her out. Check out her website. Give us that website one more time.
It is www.gllegalgroup.com.
Great Lakes Legal. And what's your phone number?
248-395-3699. And if you didn't write this down, if you just Google Great Lakes Legal Group, all the information that I gave you will pop up, and you'll be able to find us.
All right. Wonderful. Wonderful. This has been Reverend E from the Mount Pleasant Missionary Baptist Church, and we just want you to be blessed. All right. Blessings.